Hello and welcome to Wisslit. I'm your host, Matt Heppy. Today we'll be talking about the book, Zebel, the Clever One. It's the story of Michael Roman and his 10 years he and his family spent in the country of Iran. Michael, welcome to Wisslit.
Oh, glad to be here.
Michael, you spent 10 years in Iran from the late 60s until the early 70s. What brought you and your family to Iran in the first place?
Well, I had an assignment in Pakistan. And Pakistan, I put some special brand new navigational equipment in, and I did it in 3 months, and it was supposed to take 6 months to a year. So when they found out after I did that, they wanted me to work for them, the International Aviation Affairs of the FAA.
So you worked for the FAA, and you were an engineer, and you installed navigational aids?
That's correct. Navigational aids and radar and everything, communications. I was qualified in everything.
So you started out, where did you get your training in the FAA?
I started first in the Army. I was in guided missiles, and I spent half of my enlistment in guided missiles, and I worked on an active site where everybody from all over the world would come and shoot down airplanes, and I learned a lot there. And then I got in the FAA, and that was horrible. Their school, the FAA Academy, was by MIT, and it was horrible. But I
horrible in that it was so difficult?
Yes, it was difficult. It was difficult, and I went through quite a few schools, and then I was qualified in almost everything, and I was still very young. So I went to Pakistan. We were in West Virginia at that time. And I wanted to get out of West Virginia, so I needed a way out, and the family was growing. And when I got back from Pakistan, then they promoted me and sent me to Iran. And my wife was all for it, and the children, they didn't know any better. They were small.
Now you had 3 or 4 kids at the time?
At the time, there were 4 and 1 on your way.
Now, Iran was a very different country in the late 60s and early 70s. Today, it's strange for Americans to think of Iran as an allied, friendly country.
Well, it was very different. The Iranian people loved us. I can't forget the great big carpet, I mean huge, and it was John F. Kennedy, and it was hanging on this big wall. Can't forget that. And they loved the children with the blonde hair. They would stop their cars and ask if we can stroke their hair, and that was quite an innovative thing, and we'd never seen that before. So they were good people, the ones we ran into.
And today it's so different. Now we look at Iran and we see a very different place, but...
Well, the mullahs took over. It's a Muslim country. It's a Shiite Muslim country. But most countries that survive in the Middle East are run by a dictator, and they keep the mullahs happy, who control the people. That's what it's all about.
Now, were you very nervous about taking your family so far away to such a different country, or was it all an adventure?
No, because I was in Pakistan, and I saw how they lived, foreigners. I saw how the foreigners lived in Pakistan, so I thought, well, it's not like people think it is. But the write-up on it was horrible. But
well, your adventures in Pakistan, when I read about those, I mean, it was very different, the way of life, the poverty that you saw.
Poverty was horrible.
Now, you worked in Iran, you were working for the FAA?
Yes. Yes,
and
it was.
You were paid in American dollars, and did working in Iran make you wealthier because of were things less expensive in Iran? Was the dollar very valuable?
Well, that's two parts to that question. I got paid in, I'd go to the embassy and I'd get a check and get dollars or reals. On the open market, you spend the reals, and then you go to the PX to buy things which were real cheap because they were military. We were attached to the military
right.
at the time. So we could get anything, and it was rather cheap. So your salary went pretty far. I was equivalent to a major. I had identification of a major. So I was treated like a major.
Now, how old was your oldest daughter at the time when you went over?
Oh, she was about 6 years old.
So is this a big shock for her, moving to a foreign country, or was she too little to really understand?
The biggest shock, I think, was living in a hotel for 61 days. That was terrible.
When you first got there?
Right.
I remember reading about that.
And I would go out far away, and they'd be there, and it was getting depressing for the wife. And the children were, she was going to school, and another one was going to a under school. And they liked going to the school because they were full of Americans.
So it was an international school they went to. Now, did they learn Farsi while they were in school? Did they learn about Persia and Iran history?
Right. They went for a little while to an international school, but mostly it was an American school because there were a few Americans there until 1972, and then it exploded.
And now when you lived in Iran, you lived in an Iranian neighborhood?
Oh, yeah.
So you had Iranian neighbors? What were your neighbors like?
They were so nice. They were nice, but see, there were big walls around the houses. You couldn't see anybody unless you went up on a roof and looked down on it. But everything was surrounded by walls, the security, you know.
So your family was living at home there and going to school, but you went off and had some absolutely incredible adventures across the countryside of Iran.
Oh, yeah.
When we come back in our next segment, we're going to talk about some of those things that you went through, some of those adventures that make your book so fascinating.
Okay.
So we'll be back in just a couple of minutes, and we'll talk with Michael Roman about some of the events and some of the things that happened to him while he was living in Iran.
Hi, I'm Alec Fell, and on this edition of the Pulse of Wissahickon, we ask students who the third person in line for president is.
The Speaker of the House.
Ben Carson. I don't know.
I don't know.
Me.
You're watching Wisslit on WTV.
We're back with Michael Roman speaking about his novel, Zebel, actually his memoir, Zebel, the Clever One. Michael, you had some incredible adventures when you were in Iran. Some of these were with the wildlife, some were with the people. Can you tell us, you went hunting quite a bit, and you had some amazing encounters with the wildlife in Iran. Yeah. Can you tell us maybe about one of your most dangerous adventures, or when you were with the climate, the landscape, the creatures of Iran?
Well, one was the Russian bear that attacked our mules while we were up in the Caspian area, and the general who I was with, he was a rank higher than me. He says, "Michael, would you please take care of him?" And it was so foggy I couldn't see.
Take care of the bear?
Yeah. So I went out and I couldn't see him. And then I was chasing him, he was chasing me. And
so you were out on a hunting trip, you had mules with you to carry all your equipment, and a bear came in and was going after the mules?
Yes, he was going to kill them.
And the general said, "Michael, go take care of the bear."
Just like that.
So what did you had? You had a gun?
I had a .308 Winchester, and I had a .357 Magnum. And
a revolver.
A revolver, very powerful. And I couldn't get away from him. He was chasing me, I was chasing him, and I went up in a ravine and sat in front of a tree that was about 5 foot wide. And I waited for him, and he came up, and I shot him one time, and he kept coming, and then I emptied the .357. I couldn't reload fast enough, so I got the .357 in his head, and that was it. So he was big, really big. And
this is only one of the animals in Iran that tried to kill you at one point or another.
There was a lion, there was hyenas, wild boar, great big. I mean, way over 600 pounds. I remember the biggest one was 12 foot long, if you could imagine that. And 3 of us couldn't move him. 3 of us.
Now there was some crazy adventure where you slid down a mountain on a boar that you had killed. It was like a sled. It was snow out.
Oh, that was in the winter. Yeah, the snow. It was a white boar. I never saw a white boar before. It was in the snow, and I shot it, and it ran in the woods. And I said, now how did I miss that? But I was shooting armor-piercing NATO ammunition. So he came flying out after a while, and then it went right through his heart, but it didn't explode or anything. And then he was too heavy, of course, and the guy I was with was, I don't know where, and I was yelling, I couldn't. So I cut off his head and opened his belly, degutted him.
So
and
you cleaned the
cleaned
boar.
him out and hopped inside and went down like a sled down the mountain. That was, I never did that before.
I don't know if anybody else has ever done that before. So you had encounters with scorpions, with snakes, with... I mean, you almost dehydrated at one point in time. I remember on one of your trips out that you thought you were going to die. This is just the wildlife and the climate, but then there were people there that wanted to kill you.
Yeah.
What was probably the most dangerous encounter that you ever ran into while you were in Iran?
There were so many, it's hard to recall, and some of them I can't say because I'm a wounded man over there. So because I was with the upper echelons. And the thing is, like when I was first there, the war with Israel started, and we were out hunting one night. This man, he was an American Indian, and he was in charge of ammunition inspection, and he wanted to go out hunting boars. So I went out, and we ran into this Arabs, 12 of them, and I said, I don't think we should go in there. He says, oh, he wanted to, and he was wearing a cape, and he was speaking Farsi very beautifully.
So you wanted to talk to them?
He wanted to talk to them, you know, get used to the culture, but I saw their eyes, and I knew what they were.
You thought they were bandits or thieves, or you were...
They were normal villagers, but they had to steal, and I had a gun, and they wanted that gun. So they tried to get me to sit down with him, but I wouldn't. And then he came running over. I'm watching the one who's in charge and watching them, and he came running over. They're going to kill us. They're going to kill us. So I'm smiling at them, and they're wondering why I'm smiling, because they could see the rifle, but they couldn't see my pistol. At that time, it was a 9mm. That was stolen off me in another incident. But when I pulled out the gun and aiming at the chieftain, he turned white, and the other ones are looking, and then he's saying, please don't shoot, please don't shoot. And they start backing up, and then they're coming after me because they wanted that, but that pistol carried a lot of ammunition.
They were more afraid of the pistol than they were of the rifle.
Yeah, because
the rifle was
there were too many of them.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
There were too many of them. And they finally got scared enough where we got to the Jeep, and I got in and we took off, and I said, Jeremy, you should not have done that. And he says, I know. So he saw that, and he saw that everybody's not nice. You know, the ones way out.
So he was new to the country?
Oh, yeah, he came from the United States to inspect their ammunition dumps.
Now, you had one encounter where your wife saved your life. Some assassins were coming after you, and your wife actually saved your life.
Yeah, I never saw a person so brave. We were going to play bridge at one of the neighbor's house around the corner, and she couldn't stand guns. So I didn't take my gun along. And that was a mistake, because we were coming back, they were waiting for us, 2 of them with submachine guns. And I said, get away from me. And she jumped on me in the front and wrapped her arms around me. I said, for God's sake, somebody has to take care of the kids. And she just would not let go. And I'm walking while she's clinging around me. And they're pointing their guns and I'm walking backwards, so.
And the assassins, they wouldn't shoot because they didn't want to kill a woman.
Yeah, yeah,
That's an amazing bravery
yeah.
that she showed.
Well, when I got home, I got my gun and ran out. She says, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, they showed honor. I have to return the favor." And
So you went out after them.
I went out after them, and they were gone.
When we come back, we're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the amazing things that happened to you in Iran. So we'll be right back with Michael Roman and talk about more of what happened to him in Iran. And we're back with Michael Roman talking about his novel, or his memoir again, Zebel, the Clever One. So Michael, you, for several years in Iran, you were working as an engineer installing the navigational aids. But then after a while, which was an incredible part of the story, you somehow got promoted to become a major general in the Iranian Air Force.
Yeah.
How did that happen, that you became a general in the Iranian Air Force?
Well, that's an interesting story. Our seventh child was on the way. My wife was 8 months into it, and I needed more money, and my tour was getting to the end. So I got a promotion from a friend in Vietnam. So I came back home and told my wife, "Oh, I got a promotion in Vietnam. Now you can go back to the States." And she went into orbit. She started beating me up, literally, punching me.
She didn't want you going to Vietnam.
No. She says, "You love war. You're sick. You can't do this. You can't leave us again." And I says, "Well, I could see every 6 months in Hawaii." And then, she kicked me again and beat me up. And I had to not let her hurt
You're a
herself.
tough guy, but you just took it.
Yeah, but I couldn't let her hurt herself.
Sure.
So, anyway, somehow they found out about it, and these higher-ups sent this woman who we knew very well to make us an offer, and I said, well, so I wrote something that I'm sure they couldn't afford. So
Your salary.
yeah, salary,
money you wanted, and benefits.
and a car,
Yeah.
a brand new car, and the house, and the kids going to school, and all that. But they took it, and she came back in 2 days and says, "Congratulations, Michael. You are now Major General." I said, "What?" I said, "Why did they give me such a high rank?" They said, "They didn't want any American higher than you."
So you were the highest ranking American
Yes.
in Iran.
That's
and you were
what
the,
that's-
now, are you allowed to do that? As an American, can you become an officer in the
no.
foreign military?
No. But, see, they were talking to the U.S. government before that, and they said they could not ask me to work for them. So he'll have to ask you. So I wrote the thing out, and there I was now. And then the CIA came to visit me and told me all these different things. Very high-ranking CIA. And
So the Americans wanted you in there.
they wanted
The
me
CIA
there.
wanted you in there. The U.S. government wanted you in
The
there.
control of hundreds of millions of dollars, which was a lot of money at that time, 10 times as much as it is now.
And the Iranians wanted you because of your expertise, because you got
There's
the
Zebel,
crown.
the man who knows everything. That's what they called me.
Did they give you that name after your
No,
promotion?
no.
Or that you had that
Yeah.
name before?
They
Zebel, the
called
Clever One?
me, the people called me Zebel, Clever One. And it was a nice experience working with them, but they realized I could do things nobody else could do, and that it would help them, instead of hiring so many teams of experts to come in, to have one man. So they saved a lot of money.
Now you started now to meet very powerful people. You associated with the most powerful people in Iran. Did your life change a lot?
Well, initially, I didn't know what it was. Like the first day I dressed up in a suit and tie and Well, nobody would talk to me, and I went into an office, and that was the office of the person who was the head man in that place, and it just went on, and I had met people before, like in a war. I met this lieutenant colonel who went up, eventually became the commander of the Air Force. But him and I were very close. He saved my life in front of a machine gun nest.
On a base, I remember there were some guards who were...
They didn't speak Farsi, they didn't speak English, they spoke Turkish.
They were going to gun you down, and he came out and rescued you.
Yeah, he did. And they were going to shoot him too, but I don't know why they'd shoot a lieutenant colonel. But he finally says, "Run, Michael, run." So,
and you ran.
Yeah, I ran.
Now, when you were a general, the political situation started to deteriorate. The terrorism started to increase.
Well, the terrorism was there, but for some odd reason they put me on a list. They notified me that I was on the terrorist list 5 days later. From there on in, it was armament all the time.
You always carried a gun?
Always carried a gun.
Did you have a bodyguard, or
no?
You never had a bodyguard?
They knew how good I was. I could shoot like you can't imagine. And they figured I could take care of myself. In fact, that's why the general would go, the one who was above me, would go hunting with me. They didn't have to have a security team with them because they knew I could take care of them.
But you had to check your car for bombs?
Yeah.
A friend of yours?
Well, the car blew up in front of me while I was walking into the MAG office, the U.S. military, and I was coming back out, and boom, the car blew up right in front of me. It went up in the air and came down, and gasoline all over the place. But the gasoline didn't ignite. It didn't ignite. I says, now how in the world could that be? The bomb was on the gas tank.
Yeah.
I don't know. So after that, they said, you better check your car. So every day I had to check my car and go different ways to wherever I was going. Don't do the same way.
And there were a couple of times, there were a couple of assassination attempts against you. There was a poisoning, there was people tried to run you down.
Yeah. And there's other ones in that were, I got a motorcycle. And the motorcycle helped me get away, and then I got a faster one that you just hit the gas, and the front end would go up in the air, and you can go all over the place, in between the roads, over the other side, go the opposite way, everything, get away from you, so you didn't have to shoot it out.
Finally, things got so dangerous that you decided you had to get your family out.
Yes, they did, and I was able to get four of the older ones out, but 3 of them were born in Iran, so they were Iranian citizens. And they didn't want my wife to leave; they wanted me to stay there. But it worked out so beautifully. This one officer says, "I'll take you," and he went all over to all the different offices, got everything signed, then went to the final office for approval. But the man said, the general cannot sign it now, come back tomorrow. So he came, he swore that he'd be there.
And you were desperate to get out of the country at this point.
Yeah, so I got there early in the morning, which was Thursday morning, which is like Saturday morning here. And I'm waiting there, and nobody there. I says, I couldn't believe it. But this dear friend of mine who I took care of, and he used to man the gun while I could sleep in front of him on a desk watching the door with a shotgun.
Oh, jeez.
And he showed up. I says, what are you doing here? He says, oh, I come here every so many months. And he says, what are you doing here? I says, I got to get this signed. He says, give it to me. And he goes, and he runs in, he comes back out. I says, how do you do that? And he says, well, I know so much about this guy. He signs anything that I put in front of him. So that was it. And on a Saturday morning, took him to the airport, and they got off.
And you were fearful all the way until the moment that plane passed into Turkish airspace. You were worried that they were going to come for you.
And that was it. And I went to work. I didn't go to work. Went to work and there was a massacre. They killed a bunch of Americans in the gate that I would go in, a special gate, and they shot one of them in the face 70 times just to make a point.
To make a
about
point.
it. Yeah.
Yep.
So, and when I came in the office, they start screaming and, oh, he's not dead, he's not dead.
But you made it out, your family made it out, and you were
Yeah.
safe back in the United States again.
Right. They were back, and I was happy.
Michael, your story is an amazing story. It's really incredible. As I read through your memoir, I mean, it was just one event after another. It was astounding. So it's really a pleasure to have had you here today, and I want to thank you for coming on to our show.
Oh, sure. I enjoy it.
So I'm Matt Heppy signing off for this week. Please join us again for another episode of Wisslit. Thank you.